Gets along, nothing gets done.
How to do that logistically would not have been as easy as it sounds. Because you're shuttling back and forth between the House, the Senate, different offices, etc. Different legislators. But I think it's a legitimate criticism. So on that one, I take responsibility.
Party line votes that,
with respect to
I'm just going to be honest, were disappointing.
We didn't have your marks in the recovery
efforts to jumpstart the economy last winter.
We didn't get a lot of credit for it.
700,000 jobs a month. Our financial system teetered on the brink of collapse.
I was confronted
the threat of the Second Great Depression
at the beginning of my
I didn't understand then,
an omnibus
and I still don't understand why we got opposition in this caucus. As I recall,
a lot of people in this chamber.
Opposition was declared before we had a chance to actually meet and exchange ideas.
Fight at a time when I was still trying to figure out
showed that
whether or not
our economy
the financial system was melting down.
6%.
And we had to make
the most since 2003.
Decisions about
this
the economy.
Turnaround is the biggest in nearly 3 decades.
What I said was, let's keep that to a minimum. I'm not going to get much agreement. If we take the former, I suspect there's going to be a lot of overlap. All right?
Mr. President, will you consider supporting across-the-board tax relief as President Kennedy did?
Here's what I'm going to do, Mike. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at what you guys are proposing. And the reason I say this, before you say okay, I think this is important to know. What you may consider across-the-board tax cuts could be, for example, greater tax cuts for people who are making $1 billion. I may not agree to a tax cut for Warren Buffett. You may be calling for a across-the-board tax cut for the banking industry right now. I may not agree to that. So, I think that we've got to look at what specific proposals you're putting forward. And this is the last point I'll make. If you're calling for just across-the-board tax cuts, and then on the other hand saying that we're somehow going to balance our budget, I'm going to want to take a look at your math and see how that works.
Phony.
In this year's budget, this past year's budget. We're not as a consequence of policies that we initiated, but instead were built in as a consequence of the automatic stabilizers that kick in because of this enormous recession. So the increase in the budget for this past year was actually predicted before I was even sworn into office and had initiated any policies. Whoever was in there, Paul, and I don't think you'll dispute that, whoever was in there would have seen those same increases because of, on the one hand, huge drops in revenue, but at the same time, people were hurting and needed help. And a lot of these things happen automatically. Now, the reason that I'm not proposing the discretionary freeze take into effect this year, we prepared a budget for 2010, it's now going forward, is again, I am just listening to the consensus among people who know the economy best. And what they will say is that if you either increased taxes or significantly lowered spending when the economy remains somewhat fragile, that would have a destimulative effect, and potentially you'd see a lot of folks losing business, more folks potentially losing jobs. That would be a mistake when the economy has not fully taken off. That's why I propose to do it for the next fiscal year. So
yeah, to make sure nobody can get any money this year, you jerk.
Line item veto. I think there's not a president out there that wouldn't love to have it. And I think that this is an area where we can have a serious conversation. I know it is a bipartisan proposal by you and Russ Feingold. I don't like being held up with big bills that have stuff in them that are wasteful, but I've got to sign because it's a defense authorization bill, and I've got to